Hello and welcome back. My name is Casey. I'm an ObGyn physician and I have been using this channel to create tips and resources for current and future ObGyn residents. Today I'm going to be sharing my story and my path to becoming an ObGyn and a little bit about why I chose this specialty. But before I jump in, if you are currently applying and interviewing for ObGyn residency positions, please check out the 15-page guide that I created with the top 15 questions that I think everyone really needs to ask during their ObGyn residency interviews. You can access that guide through the link in the description box below. Otherwise, let's just jump right in. So I am actually Canadian. I was born and raised in Vancouver, British Columbia, and although my parents worked in healthcare was never an area that I was particularly interested in. My strength was always in the arts. I excelled in English and writing and social studies and history, and very much struggled with math, physics, chemistry, pretty much anything to do with the sciences. So when I was in high school, it was never even an option for me really in my mind to consider going into something like medicine, engineering, or any of the STEM fields. And because I really did enjoy writing and I was good at it, at least at the time, I decided that I wanted to pursue an education that would train me to be able to become a journalist or a novelist, or also do something in the film industry. I was very interested in the idea of cinematography and writing screenplays for movies. Ultimately, I ended up applying for undergrad programs in both communications and journalism, and I was accepted into a Bachelor of Arts studying communications at Carleton University in Ottawa, Ontario, so kind of on or near to the other side of the country. And I moved there when I was 17 because my birthday's in November, at the end of 2010, or the August of 2010, and then I started in September of 2010. Throughout my undergraduate degree, I really loved everything that I was studying, and I was pretty set on focusing on broadcast journalism or becoming a copywriter of some kind. However, everything kind of changed for me in my third year. So at that time, I had an unusually high amount of exposure to individuals that were struggling with mental health concerns such as depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and suicidal ideation. And I myself was experiencing anxiety and some depression for the first time in my life. And I had never been exposed to really anything in the world of mental health, or I never really knew anyone prior to this with mental health issues. And having been exposed to so many people going through these things at the same time, and then me starting to experience some of those things myself, really made me reevaluate what it was that I wanted to do with my life and my professional career. I had watched several of those individuals who were close to me get help with counseling psychologists and psychiatrists, or even their primary care physicians. Some were started on medications, some were able to manage their symptoms with therapy, and some of those individuals were hospitalized as well. I myself was able to overcome some of the anxiety and depressive symptoms that I was having with the help of a wonderful primary care physician that really helped me during that time, as well as a clinical psychologist who introduced me to cognitive behavioral therapy, which drastically changed my life. And because of all of these experiences, I decided that I wanted to be able to be that person that could help another individual overcome the mental health challenges that they were facing. And I think it's like that for a lot of people who choose to pursue a career in medicine. If it wasn't something that you've been planning for your whole life, I think individuals have certain experiences like this that really make them question what it is that they are currently doing and pushes them to pivot in a different direction. Ultimately, I decided to apply for medical school, the reason being that I wanted to practice clinically and I wanted to be able to prescribe medications for my patients, and that is why I decided not to go into any type of counseling psychology. At that time in Canada, I really did not know a whole lot about the nurse practitioner route, and we did not really have a robust way to train to become a PA, and that's still definitely a clinical practice that's much more common in the United States compared to Canada. All around though, I will say I did go into it a little bit blind. It was a very abrupt decision that I made, but I really felt strongly that this was the path that I needed to go down, and I kind of just took a leap of faith, and I thought, if I feel like I'm being pulled this strongly to medicine, I'm gonna find a way to make it happen. So for the rest rest of my third year and my fourth year, I had signed myself up for pre-med courses and started to work my way through those. And through that process, I quickly learned that if I wanted to go to medical school in Canada or even the United States, it was going to take a couple more years for me to meet the prerequisites required in order to get into medical school. At the time in Canada, there were only about 17 medical schools and they were highly competitive. So most applicants who were getting in had already had a master's or a PhD in addition to their undergraduate. So it was around this time that I started looking into international options just to see if there would be anywhere else outside of these two countries where I might be able to apply, complete a medical training, and still be able to come back to practice in Canada. There were many considerations that factored into my decision to apply for Caribbean medical schools specifically, as opposed to schools abroad in Europe. One of them being that I was able to get the most information about a variety of different Caribbean medical schools compared to international schools overseas, and also the fact that it's a little bit closer to home. I knew that there were a lot of potential hoops that I was going to have to jump through should I attend a Caribbean or international medical school. However, I just had this feeling that I should pursue this, and if I were to get into any of the schools I applied to in the Caribbean, that I should go and that it just would work out. I just knew. So I attended St. James School of Medicine, and my campus was in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And at that school, the first 2 years where all of your basic sciences are completed in the Caribbean. And then when you complete your 16 months of the basic sciences, then you complete a semester, which is a board review course in Chicago, then take step 1, and then you complete the last 2 years of medical school, which are your clinical rotations in Chicago. So all throughout the basic sciences and into the early clinical sciences, I was planning to pursue a career as a psychiatrist. Neurology was a close contender, but I went into my third year with an open mind. Everyone tells you that even if you're planning on pursuing one specific thing, that you should really keep an open mind when you do your rotations, because a lot of times people actually change how they feel about each different specialty. So I kept an open mind except for ObGyn. You don't really learn a whole lot about that specialty in your early years of medical school. However, the things that I did know about it, I just knew were not going to be appealing to me. I was not that interested in surgery. I had heard that that lifestyle was terrible. And overall, when I envisioned myself doing the things that I thought an ObGyn would have to do, I just knew that that was not going to be for me. So it was actually the one specialty that I had exclusively ruled out. Now, because I was planning to pursue psychiatry, I had arranged it so that my psych rotation was supposed to be the second rotation of my third year of medical school, and ObGyn was going to be one of the last ones that year. However, in a turn of events, my psych rotation was replaced with my ObGyn rotation, so I now was doing OB at the beginning of my third year and psych almost last. So I was very frustrated by this, and because of the things that I already described, I went into this rotation with very low expectations. I just knew that I was not going to like it. However, I think because I had such low expectations, that contributed to me having actually a much better experience than I anticipated to have, in addition to the many reasons that the specialty is amazing. Very quickly, I realized that I was enjoying myself much more than expected. I had the opportunity to work with wonderful attendings, and one of them was an excellent mentor to me. One of the attendings that I had was actually a recent graduate from Residency, so it was really fun to see her interact with patients because she was so fresh, and I loved being able to watch a woman be able to interact with another woman and provide care, and that relationship was extremely special to see play out. As it turns out, I really did enjoy surgery. The excitement of being on call on labor and delivery was much better than I anticipated. I loved being able to be a part of the best day of some of these families' lives, and I felt like the acuity was very satisfying. I felt like I never was bored when I was on the service. There was constantly a ton of things that I could get involved with and run around and do. I just was constantly interested in everything that was happening at all times. When I went on to my subsequent rotations, I constantly kept thinking about OB and gynecology, and every day that I went through a different rotation, I was constantly thinking, man, I wish I was back on L&D. So really, I did feel like I was being pulled towards the specialty, and I did actually not want that. I did not want to be an ObGyn, because all of the stuff that was amazing about it was great. However, I did know that Residency was going to be longer than a psychiatry residency, and I had planned in my mind for a 3-year training period after medical school. I knew that the hours were going to be extremely rough as a resident and possibly even as an attending. I knew it was going to be extremely competitive, especially as an IMG, and I had just not ever mentally prepared to want to pursue this specialty, so it was just completely not in my plans, and I actively tried to not think about how much I liked it on a regular basis. I held out all year until I finally got to do my core psych rotation, and that rotation, while it was very interesting, was actually not really what I expected it to be. I think that a lot of the reasons that people had told me I wouldn't like psychiatry, that I had previously brushed off, rolled my eyes at, and said, no, that's not gonna bother me. I know it's gonna be like that. Those things ended up actually bothering me. I did mostly inpatient psychiatry, and so I felt very frustrated and sad when I was on those services because it did feel like so many of the times we were able to provide an adequate treatment for patients. However, when they were discharged, they would discontinue their medications, and it was a consistent cycle of readmissions, discharges, and then being readmitted to the hospital again. There were so many wonderful things about that specialty that I did enjoy, and I definitely felt like there was a lot of meaningful work to be had. However, it was throughout the course of those couple weeks on that rotation that I still kept thinking about OB, and I was still being pulled in that direction, and that's when I knew that I had to abandon ship and go in the direction of OBGYN instead of psychiatry. So it wasn't so much that psych was bad and I hated it as much as it was I couldn't stop thinking about this other specialty, and I knew that if I couldn't stop thinking about it and I wanted to be back on that service all year already, that had to be the specialty that I pursued. So I signed myself up for a sub-I in maternal fetal medicine and then a general outpatient and inpatient OBGYN rotation with a private practitioner. And I did those rotations in my 4th year and had more great experiences, and then applied for the match. As an IMG, I applied extremely broadly, but I had really focused on my MFM sub-I to get to know the residents there at that program, make a really good impression, work with them closely, and ask for letters of recommendation because I knew that that was probably going to be my best shot because I already had my foot in the door with residents at the program. And in the end, that is where I matched to. That program was at the Mercy Trinity Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, but the obstacles didn't stop there. About a month into starting my OBGYN residency in July 2020, we had actually found out that the hospital was going to potentially be closing. There were multiple other residency programs at that hospital, and it was not any specific program that was closing down, but the entire hospital entity as a whole. Graciously, many of the surrounding residency programs in the city of Chicago knew that we had a residency program, and they opened up spots so that our residents could interview and join their programs. We also had the option to look elsewhere, including on ACOG Clearinghouse, to see if there were any open spots at other programs. And ultimately, it did feel a little bit like divine intervention. I had always wanted to live in California and move out there and practice there. I didn't get any interviews at programs in California. My co-resident at Mercy, who was a year ahead of me, had a friend that she went to medical school with that was at a program in California, and they happened to be talking about the situation, and that person said, hey, we've taken on some, this is my roommate's dog, Bo. My senior's friend said, you know, we have taken on some residents from other programs that transferred out. Let me talk to my program director and see if they're looking to take on another resident. And so ultimately, they were looking to take on both a 2nd year and a 1st year resident, and that person reached out to me knowing that I was already from the West Coast and possibly would be interested, and I said yes, and we both interviewed for that program and we both got in. So in December of my intern year of residency, right after I had finally gotten the hang of how to navigate residency, intern year, and that hospital, I packed my bags up and moved out to California to the new program, which was Loma Linda University, where I completed my training for the next 3.5 years. So if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that I graduated from residency this past July 2024, and I have started working as an attending this past September, and that's my story. I hope that if you watched this and are considering going into medicine, or if you're already along your medical journey and you are debating whether or not to go into ObGyn, that you will see that anything is possible and maybe get the idea that if you are being pulled in a direction, a specific direction, even if it was unexpected, and even if it seems like there are a ton of obstacles that you are going to have to face on the journey to get there, that you are having that feeling likely for a very important reason, and to strongly consider going in that direction. The world needs more excellent doctors. The world needs more excellent ObGYNs. And if you have any more questions about my journey and how I got here, feel free to leave a comment below and I will try and answer them. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.